Hello everyone! So today I want to do a bit of a different second channel discussion. So last week we lost the Splat 3 Championship in an upset in top 8, and my team's on a bit of a break for 2 weeks, and I also wanted to take a bit of time to reflect on more mental game stuff, as I believe that was a large factor, as well as just think about things for a while. Because for quite a few majors in a row, I've come very close to winning key sets. There's been two to three against Kings that we lost in overtime. There was the Starburst set 2 weeks ago. There was, of course, the loss that we had last week after getting a 3-0 win on DNA, who built a comp that specifically dealt with us. And there are even other examples I'm forgetting at the moment. So I wanted to take a while to kind of just get a lot of mental goals and a lot of things out of it. Today, I would like to talk about one of those, and maybe if you guys are interested, I'll talk about other things that I've learned and picked up to be able to improve my mental before my team comes back. So, today I want to talk about a topic that's a bit more specific to me, but it might apply to someone else if you happen to main a weapon that is not considered meta, or close to being meta. And that is mentality when picking a weapon like this. Now, this is obviously something I do a bit right now with S-92, but for a while I didn't really do that. When I switched into Splatoon 2, for a bit I tried to make my old weapons of Range Blaster and H3 work, and it became very clear very quickly as I got onto a top team for the first time with Neptune, that that was not going to work anymore. H3 at the time is significantly worse than it is now, but I'm not going to get into that, not the point of the video. So, I had to make a decision. I had to change my weapons and I had to think of what I wanted to do. And so I made a rule for myself. It was a very bad rule, and I'll explain why later, because on paper it's going to sound good. I will only main something if I believe it is at least top tier. And with that decision, I picked Umbrella because everyone said it was broken, and I already liked and used it anyway, and decided to make that my one-trick weapon. Now, for me, that decision was very easy, because I already wanted to main Umbrella. In fact, I played it in a tournament the first hour it came out and got a win over a high-level team with it. So, I had all the reason to believe I should do it. And for a while, that's what I did. Eventually, I ended up picking up Splasher and playing that weapon, and Cancer Rapid. However, there are a few issues with this. First off, what I think is going to be a top tier and what is actually a top tier might not be the same thing. For Explosion and Umbrella, it certainly was, especially with how overtuned they were after 1.4 and their own launches. But with Cancer Rapid, honestly, it's hard to say. There are some metas where, looking back, it probably was top tier, but in way more of them, it might have been a high tier weapon. And even then, it's very easy to dispute it for many different points, such as the weapon class it's in, or the special it has. It became pretty clear, as time went on, that that was an objective method to judge things. At the same time, judging a top tier off of any form of objectivity isn't going to cut it either, for quite a few reasons. First off, there's no community tier list, and community perceptions are often wrong. Stamper, for around the first month and a half that this game came out, wasn't actually seen as that good a weapon. In fact, there were actual top players who had made statements that pre-patch Stamper could not win events because its charge slash velocity was way too slow to work. That is a real statement. That weapon ended up being seen as so good that after getting ink efficiency nerfs and multiple burst bomb nerfs and a hitbox nerf, and one of those ink efficiency nerfs affecting Zipcaster, it is still seen as a top 5, potentially top 3 weapon in the entire game. So, needless to say, especially when it comes to new weapons, the community doesn't really have a great track record on being able to accurately tell how good most weapons are. Obviously, there are some exceptions to this, but these are only going to be for a few most staple weapons. In this patch, it is Splash-O-Matic and Ballpoint Splout. Anything else, there is reason to suspect they're in specific placements, but in terms of absolutely being guaranteed that these will work in pretty much every situation and be a staple top tier, those are by far above anything else in the game right now. So, you can't just ditch any rule either. If you want to go and try to make any weapon work just because you like it, and you want to comment that anything can win if you try hard enough, you're going to be met with a very harsh reality depending on the weapon you pick. There is a reason I do not touch Umbrella, I do not like to play Umbrella, and I do not enjoy it, outside of the fact that it feels weak as hell. Despite it being a weapon I have played for 5 years, I know full well that the game balance that weapon is in means that it is nearly impossible for that weapon to actually win anything. so near impossible that even if you're going to argue that it could potentially happen, it is by no means worth the effort, and by that logic, that effort put on other weapons would honestly just be way easier in order to be able to win with them. So, there has to be a balance of some kind. You can't be completely objective, but maybe you can bring some objectivity to it. Your subjective opinion can matter, but it can't matter too much. And how good something is has to matter, but it also can't matter too much. It makes it very difficult to be able to tell what you should pick up, especially if you are a higher level competitive player. And I'll say this here for the time being, but the higher up you go as a competitive player, the more strict how good a weapon is will apply. If you're a low-level player, you can probably pick the worst weapon in the game and go win a low ink if you try hard enough. That's not to say it's going to be easy, it's to say that it is actually feasible. There are people who have used very low-tier weapons in low ink and had success with it. That happening at higher levels is very difficult and practically never happens. The best example you can probably look for in this game is Chara winning a tournament with Forge Splattershot Pro. And Forge Pro mainly has the problem of being outclassed. So it could be argued that a player like Chara, who is so far individually than most other top players, he is the guy who is known for getting the highest X power in Splatoon 2 multiple times, as well as basically getting 3,000 every month, that maybe you could do it. And even then, that's a one-off tournament. That did not happen again, and he had switched off it in other events. So if you're trying to look at things from a long-term perspective, even that example is not an indicator that that could keep going forever. Currently, I don't know if I have all the answers for this, but for me personally, especially with S-Blast 92 coming out and Machine being nerfed, I had to make a difficult decision. The original plan for the North American Opens was to play Sloshing Machine and Splatana Stamper, with Machine mainly covering for any place the Stamper might be bad at. Then, Machine got nerfed, which is another factor that we have to account for. There can be patches before major events that might change how good we perceive things. And suddenly, Machine did not seem like that strong an option. Obviously, the time has passed and we know the weapon is probably pretty good, but even now we're not completely certain. It's just a lot of theory, and that can throw in another factor in the mix. S-Blast on paper looks really good, and Machine looked like it got worse, and on top of it, I knew I would be better with S-Blast and it would fit our team better role-wise. So I had to make the difficult decision to figure out what to do, and ultimately that was a decision I made because of what happened to work better in practice. And in fact, having the area of effect with the specific comps we had worked so much better that I ended up not doing Stamper entirely because we did worse with it fairly consistently. Now, obviously time has passed, and it's going to be a bit easier to tell, but one thing that I had noticed looking back on things is I second-guessed my weapon choices quite a bit. Yes, that was a very unfortunate Reeve Slaughter in the background, by the way. I had often second-guessed my own weapon choices quite frequently, and even now, especially with how poorly that tournament went the second time around, I'm left to question, okay, did I make the wrong decision? Would changing a different weapon really have made that much of a difference? And honestly, it's not something I'm ever going to know. It's really easy to say no, and it's really easy to say yes. At the same time, that S-Blast did work and got plenty of results, in fact our highest tournament placing yet, it's also very easy to say that, well, maybe that would have happened regardless of the weapon, or maybe it could have been even better. At the same time, saying the Machine would have fixed all of our problems is very naive and not very accurate. At the end of the day, there's going to be no way to really tell for sure, and this is just my perspective. Other people picking up weapons may have different reasons, logic, or things that they're looking for. Personally, I'm looking to be the best and be on the best team. So, here's my perspective going forward, and my advice that I'd recommend to other people. If you are going to play a weapon that is going to be off-meta, I think that you should believe in the fact that the weapon could win and have objective reasoning to that. You might be wrong, you might be right, it's hard to say, but at the very least you should have some form of logic to it. Personally, I still hope to see any weapon I plan to play as at least high tier, and having a valid reason to be used at that. If I was not to believe in that, for whatever reason, or if any of you do not believe in your weapon that much, then I think it is more than likely that either you are going to accept that you are playing a weapon with those limitations and set your goals accordingly, or just switch and play something you know will be better, which there's definitely some options out there. At the end of the day, it's really up to you. But I think for me, I've been put into the situation where I think I have to realize that I have to pick one or the other. It doesn't really matter which one I can do. I can switch to something super meta and make it work, or I can play something I think is good enough and probably make it work. The NA Opens are a good indicator that that possibility is there if I put my time into it. But at the end of the day, I need to stop second-guessing myself and make a decision. For those curious about what I decided to do specifically, At the moment, I plan to stick with S-Blast and Stamper as my weapon pool, and I really do believe that S-Blast is good enough to be able to win and has valid reasons to be picked even over other top tiers. That being said, I'm also on a team, and currently my team is fine with that, but if they ever change their mind and wanted me to do something otherwise, I would not hesitate in switching and playing something that the team wanted me to play. At the end of the day, I'm here to win, and my team being involved in that decision means I'm going to be more than willing to adapt based on what they need, and that's something I've just decided is best for me going forward. Not everyone has a team and can factor that into their decision, but if you're very unsure on what you want to do and willing to do either one, that's probably a good option in order to figure out what you want to do. At the end of the day, though, that's really my advice. If you're going to use something that's off-meta, you better have good reasoning and you better believe and commit to it. You can't half-ass playing an off-meta weapon, or you're going to be second-guessing yourself in your decisions. And while I was able to find some success with S-Blast so far, if I hope to actually completely win with it and not just have a solid placement, my mentality going forward is going to have to shift. And I recommend this to anyone else learning the weapon so that hopefully this is not a mistake you have as well in a crucial set. Thanks for watching.